John Ryan, Jeff Blankman. On the phone with us right now is the head coach of the IKM Manning Wolves. It is Keith Wagner. And, Coach, welcome to KCIM Sports Rewind. I'm sure quite an honor to make your debut here today, correct?
Absolutely. Great to be on with you guys.
Now, I got to give it to you, Jeff. You know this. I know this. This side of Tim Bell, nobody was more animated on the sidelines than Keith Wagner. You have a Keith Wagner story at all?
I do. I think it kind of reminds me a little bit of Tim. It's the kicking, of the thing. I don't think that Coach has done that for a few years, but, usually you can tell when something doesn't go quite so well or he wants to get a point across because you hear the noise coming from the bench area.
Yeah, all energy from this guy. And did you know, Keith? I mean, are you aware that you guys are that expressful on the bench?
Yeah, I've tried to calm it down a little bit the last couple of years. I know my shoes took a beating there for about a 5-year period. I know I got a new pair of shoes, so I know when I can feel it coming on. I've tried to stop it a couple times. I've got a little too obnoxious, but I guess that's just energy, I guess.
Oh, yeah. You know what? It's entertaining. It's fun. And, boy, I know you just love it. I love working with those kids.
I do. It's very enjoyable to see kids grow, not just basketball-wise, but hopefully mature as young adults too. So that's just part of it.
By the way, speaking of kids, how's your son doing?
He is doing well. He just finished up his junior year at Simpson College. Had a really good season, and the team especially had a really good season. They were 16-10, advanced in the American Rivers Conference tournament, and ended up falling to Nebraska Wesleyan. But he got some honors. He was second-team All-American Rivers Conference, so it went well for him and the team, and he's looking forward to his senior year down in Indianola.
And really nice to see, transferred in last year. You could tell kind of just trying to get comfortable with everything last year. This year seemed to more settled in. That was really great to see. Keith, we're talking tournament with you there. NCAA tournament, how the brackets looking for you right now?
And a couple of them, they're not bad, and a couple of them, they're not good. I switched some things up. A couple of them I think are doing all right. I really like North Carolina and Kentucky just because their length and athleticism and obviously good players. But we'll see how that works in the Sweet 16 coming up here. But just really enjoyable stuff to watch and the passion the kids play with, and they don't want to end their season. It's really entertaining and kind of inspirational to watch kids compete at such a high level.
I'm always curious about how a coach watches like a tournament game, a college game. Do you sit there and think strategy along, or can you actually just sit and watch and relax and enjoy the game?
I'm pretty good about just relaxing and enjoying the game, except, I am pretty much a diehard Iowa Hawkeye fan. So when I was playing like yesterday, I get pretty intense with that game. But the rest of them, I'm pretty good. I can watch and stay pretty calm. Yesterday, I wasn't quite as calm, but it's really enjoyable to watch. And like I said, watching kids compete like that is really entertaining stuff.
See, I have this mental image in my head of you at home. You have bleachers installed in your house. Is that how you watch the games?
Well, I get pretty excited during certain games that I get up and walk around and might yell a few things out loud just for fun. But
we call it basketball Tourette's at my house.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, I do get a little obnoxious with some of the games, but it's just fun. It's just enjoyable. You just want your teams to do well.
Is there a part of the couch, Coach, that's worn out from where you're kicking it with the back of your foot?
That would get me in trouble with the wife, so I have to get up and walk around and go outside.
Let's talk about the history of the NCAA tournament. Obviously, you're a coach. You've been following it for years. What are some of great memories of just the NCAA tournament as a whole?
You know what? My very first memory was when Iowa played Georgetown in, I think, 1980, and I think Steve Wade had a tip in, and they beat Georgetown to go to the Final Four. So that was my very first memory, and that's my favorite Iowa player still to this day probably is Ronnie Lester. And I remember him just being a catalyst for that team, and that's my very first memory of watching the NCAA tournament. They made the Final Four, lost to Louisville. They had Darrell Griffith, I believe, was with Louisville at that time, and they got beat in a close game. And then they used to have a third, fourth place game, and they lost to Purdue and Purdue had a guy by the name of Joe Barry Carroll that was a really good player for them. And so that was my first memories of the NCAA tournament. And I think ever since then, I've been a pretty steady watcher all the way through.
And Keith, you got an opportunity to meet Mr. Lester. You sent me a picture of that. What was that like?
That was really cool. He was just a really neat individual. He's retired and lives in Florida now, but still is a pretty avid Hawk. But it was just really, really neat because I remember as a young person out in my driveway, out in our hoop on the farm in Primgar, pretending I was Ronnie Lester, and then to get to meet somebody that you kind of idolized as a young person, that was really cool. And I was able to tell him that, and he was just a really nice person. So that kind of made me feel good that somebody that I idolized as a young person was a quality person as well as, obviously an excellent basketball player.
A lot of people right now, Coach, kind of mentioning that Duke game as maybe the game of the tournament so far this year. I look back over some of my youth, and I remember, I think it was Sleepy Williams, if I remember his name, from Georgetown, throwing it to North Carolina, at the end of the game. You had Chris Webber calling the timeout against Carolina, Jordan, Keith Smart hitting the game winner for Indiana. What are some other games that kind of jump out for you as memories of maybe an NCAA tournament game?
You know what? I remember real clearly when NC State beat Houston.
Yep.
That long, I don't know. It was Derek Wittenberg maybe shot the long three-pointer about the half-court line, and Lorenzo
Charles.
Maybe that's He got the tip in for NC State to win, and then I watched Jim Belvano run around the floor. I remember that really vividly, sitting in my living room. Another one is one you mentioned was when Chris Webber called that timeout. I remember watching that game really quite, just remember sitting there watching that and just amazement and all the effort that, the Fab Five put into it, but Carolina was able to come out on top. So those are just some games right off the top of my head that I can think of, but it's just the excitement and passion that college kids have that you don't really see in the pro game. That's kind of interesting to me.
Yeah. How about coaches? I mean, coaches make their careers in the tournaments. I mean, you're talking Krzyzewski and all those guys. Who are some of the coaches that you grew up thinking, man, I'm going to model my game a little bit after them?
I don't know if there's exactly just one person that I grew up idolizing as far as a coach. I followed a lot of Iowa coaches just because they were my favorite team. I always liked Lute Olson. I thought Lute Olson was pretty cool, as a young person. I always liked Roy Williams too, Carolina, Kansas. I thought he just, he took a lot of Iowa kids, but it was fun to watch him, and I still like to watch him coach and manage the game. I know he has really good athletes, and that makes you a better coach, but I kind of like Roy Williams too. So I'd say those two guys are guys that I really enjoy watching coach the game.
Coach, is that team with Ronnie Lester that made the Final Four for Iowa, is that the best Iowa team you've seen, or do you look at maybe some of the B.J. Armstrong teams or some of those teams from that generation?
Well, right when I was a junior and senior in high school, I went to the 1986, when I was a junior in high school. I went up to Minneapolis, and Iowa State was playing up there, and so was Iowa. And I remember going to that. It was the first two rounds, and Iowa State was there, and they had Jeff Greer, fantastic player. Jeff Hornacek was playing at that time. And then Iowa, a younger version of B.J. Armstrong, and they had Gary Wright. Al Lorenzen. Those teams were very athletic. I still think that team in 1980 was probably the best team. And partially, I think if Ronnie Lester doesn't get hurt and have a bad knee, I think in 1980 they have a chance to win the national championship. But that's probably seen it through Hawkeye-colored glasses. But I think that was probably the best Iowa team that I remember watching. But there were some other good teams, too, like in the 80s when George Raveling brought in all those players. Tom Davis did a nice job with them. I remember them losing to UNLV. They had a big lead. That was my senior year in high school, so that was 86, 87. 87, they won 30 games. I really thought they were a Final Four team that year, but they couldn't get past UNLV. And I think Indiana ended up winning that Final Four that year in '87, and Iowa had beaten them pretty handily in Iowa City earlier that year. But I think those two teams in the mid '80s and then that 1980 team was really, really good. The other player on that team that I took a picture with this summer was Vince Brookins, and he was from Ohio, but he was a great player. And I think if they would have had the 3-point line back then, he would have made a few threes too. So those are just some teams and guys that I remember watching. And probably have to blame my sister. She graduated from the University of Iowa in 81. So that was right when Hayden Fry got there for football, and then Lute Olson really had some good basketball teams as well.
I tell you what, Coach, we tease you a little bit about the antics on the sidelines, but I tell you what, it's fun to watch your teams play. They play fundamental, great basketball. You have built a great program down there. We really, really respect you guys as a coach and as a program down there.
Well, we appreciate you guys covering us and the quality men that you guys are and covering our teams. And we try to do things the right way. I mean, we have kids play hard, and we've been lucky over the years to have some really talented kids. And most of all, I think they were hard workers, and hopefully, when they left, they learned a few things, and they had a good time playing high school basketball.
And, Coach, when you do decide it's time to, take a little bit of a break, or even on your nights off, color commentary seems to suit you well. So we look forward to more of those games, too.
Yeah, that was a good time. I really enjoyed that. I probably need to – now, what I thought about afterward, I told my wife, I said, there's a lot of preparation into that. Those guys have to know the players and the stats, and to talk quickly. Sometimes I stumbled. I thought, uh-oh. And then there was one time I was talking, and you asked me for some commentary, and I said, nope, I think I'm good. And I thought I should have come up with something better than that.
That's where you pull out the Bob Uecker line. He's not the best color guy in the league for nothing, folks. Coach,
I know it.
We appreciate you spending some time with us. We sure appreciate that, and we look forward to seeing you on the golf course this summertime, maybe.
That sounds good. Well, thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, Keith.